Do we want to angle that a little bit so that we can see Dave? Angle like far enough you can't see me? We are live streaming and recording. All right, we'll adjust the camera just a little bit. All right, we'll call this regular meeting of the Board of Finance to order. The first item on the agenda is comments from the public. If there is a resident or anyone from the public who would like to make a comment and you're on the phone line, you press *3 on your phone, that raises your hand. We'll then have the moderator of the meeting will then get you access, and you'll get a response that you are being allowed into the meeting. You then have to press *6 to speak. So again, you start with *3, then you will be told that you're being allowed in, and then you have to press *6 to speak. If anyone of the public would like to make a comment now, I'll open that up to you. If anyone from the public would like to do it, press *3 on your phone. You can make a comment.
Hi, Tim. Can you hear me?
Yes, can hear you.
Hi, Tim. This is Greg Howard. How are you?
Good. How you doing, Greg?
Good. I just wanted to briefly, just virtually as it may be, just introduce myself to some of the members that I may not have met yet as the incoming state rep, and just be able to say hello, let you guys know that I will make as much effort as I can to attend as many of your meetings as I can. And for those who don't have my contact information, Chairman O'Brien does have it, so please reach out to him and grab it so you can get in touch with me. My goal is to be 100% available to all of you at all times. So I just wanted to introduce myself. Thank you all for serving on the board, and that's it.
Thank you, Representative Howard. All right, any other comments from the public? Please press *3 at this time. Any other comments? Please press *3. Any other comments? Please press *3. No one else here? All right, that is finished. Moving on, previous minutes. We have, I believe, 2 sets of minutes. We have 2 or 1, Jill? I thought there was 2. Yeah, in my documents I only got 1. So let's start with 1. Can I get a motion? Can I get a motion for the first one for the October 7th, 2020 minutes? Can I get a motion to approve? So moved. Motion from Mr. Frischman. Oh, as a reminder to all board members and guests, please make sure to identify yourself before you speak or when you're doing something so that Jill can record it for the minutes. I have a motion from Mr. Frischman to approve the minutes from October 7th. Do I have a second?
Lynn Young, I'll second.
Motion and a second. Discussion of the October 7th minutes. Any addenda or correction from anyone?
Tim, it's Mike Falkenbeck. The only thing that caught my attention was the ending time at 4:31. Did we really only have a 31-minute meeting? Could be a record.
It was our best one yet.
Okay. I wasn't sure if that was a typo or if that was correct.
No, I believe that's actually correct.
Okay. Excellent. No other comments, though. Minutes look good.
Anyone else with any comments or corrections? All right, all in favor of approving those minutes, please say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Anyone opposed? Anyone opposed, please state your name and that you're opposed. Those minutes unanimously passed. Okay. I'm struggling to find the other date. What's the other? Oh, there we go. Okay, I got it. Can I get a motion to approve the minutes from the November 4th regular meeting of the Board of Finance, please?
Lynn Young, move to approve.
Can I get a second?
No, second.
I got Dave Motherway with a second, with a quick second, and Lynn Young with the motion. Any discussion, any addenda correction or comments on the minutes from November 4th? Hearing none, all in favor, say aye. Aye.
Aye.
All right.
Any opposed, please state your name and that you're opposed. Those minutes are unanimously approved. Now, what I would ask for next is, could I get a motion to add 4 items to the agenda? Being that this is a regular meeting, we can make a change as we go here. I would like to get a motion to add, after the Campbell Grain Mill site update, I would like to add the following items: add an update on the Old Mystic Bridge, and add a Lantern Hill Bridge update. And then at the bid waiver request, we would add a bid waiver request from the Board of Education for the Avaya Cloud Office district-wide. It's ACO district-wide. And then after the discussion of the development of funding for the new police department policy manual, add a body camera update from the police department. Could I get a motion for those 4 additions, please?
Lynn Young, second.
So I got a motion from Mr. Frischman, a second from Ms. Young. Any discussion? All right, all in favor of the additions, please say aye.
Aye.
All opposed, please state your name and that you're opposed. All right, that additions to the agenda are approved. Okay, so now on to our new business. Additional appropriations, review of year-to-date additional appropriations from fund balance. I will turn it over to you, Jim Sullivan.
No additions from last meeting, or actually from the 2 meetings prior, so status quo.
Okay, so nothing changed on that. Very good. Next item on the agenda is bid waiver request. First item is a request from the Stonington PD for a bid waiver for the purchase of a new animal control vehicle from NHQ for $28,341.90. Could I get a motion? And the associated vehicle outfit from Swab Wagon Company for $18,930. Can I get a motion to approve this bid waiver request for the PD, please? So moved. Motion, Mr. Frischman. Can I get a second?
Second.
Second from Mr. Motherway. All right, discussion. Is this you, Lieutenant Schneider?
It is.
Okay, so everyone on the phone and computer knows we have Lieutenant Schneider in the room who's going to give us an update on this one.
Okay, so our goal was to bring animal control to the proper specifications for this day and age. Our current animal control vehicle is beyond its life. It's basically a metal box in the back. There's a lot of animal welfare issues that we have to deal with when there's too hot or too cold. So this vehicle, there's an associated picture at the end in the previous attachment that I provided Mr. Sullivan earlier. I don't know if you got that, but basically what we're looking to do is buy an F-250 under the Plymouth County Commissioner's contract pricing through MHQ. And that F-250 would be drop shipped directly from Ford to the Swab Wagon Company out in Pennsylvania. We would mount the chassis cage, essentially, containment system directly onto it, and then ship it back to us here directly at the police department. From there, we have some miscellaneous things to do: radios, lighting, some graphics to identify it as an animal control vehicle, and it should be done. They'll have full air conditioning and heating and cooling for the rear system, which is something that we don't have and we're currently looking to do. So that should get us another at least 10 to 12 years. I don't know if anyone has any other questions.
Does anyone have any questions for Lieutenant Schneider? And I would remind members, if you do, please identify yourself first, and we'll try and moderate this.
Mr. Chairman, Glenn Frischman, I have one question for Lieutenant. What's the year of our vehicle?
I believe, I don't have it right in front of me, but I believe it's 2011, maybe, 2010. It's got about 120,000 miles on it. The cage and the containment system, however, was used previously from 2007. And that's really what's kind of fallen into complete disrepair. The aluminum body on it starting to corrode and rust, the rivets are falling. So it's got no heating element or cooling element in it. So the dogs or animals, whatever we have in there, are kind of subject to all the extremes of being placed into a metal box, which is just pretty not acceptable.
Okay, thank you, Lieutenant.
Go ahead, Dave.
David, by the way, just out of curiosity, you may or may not know this off the top of your head, roughly how many calls a year?
Oh, I honestly couldn't even provide you several hundred calls a year. You know, they do mutual aid requests for, you know, we help out in North Stonington and other towns, but I don't know off the top of my head, but I would say well into the hundreds. Easily.
I could actually answer that. Number of calls vary month to month. Usually the average is about 35, 40 on some months high of 50. Low month, I haven't seen it in the teens. It's usually on a low month would be 25 to 26 calls for service with the animal control vehicle.
Thank you.
Hi, it's Mike Auerbach. Just a quick question. I'm curious, how do we end up selecting the operation down in Pennsylvania to the additional work? Is there not something close? Yeah, sorry, go ahead.
To be completely honest, I don't have a lot of experience with animal control upfits. I did some research. There's several companies throughout the U.S. that do it, specifically for animal control units, most of which are out in the Midwest or the West Coast. Pennsylvania seems like a relatively easy one to get a hold of. And we will always work with MHQ through the purchase of our current vehicle. So that was an easy way for us to be able to establish some contract pricing for the F-250. And then it was a relatively close and easy business to kind of do, you know, that was relatively local. I should say, you know, there's ones out in Kansas, but the shipping and the logistics of trying to get those upfit are difficult. So that's what brought us to Schwab. And little research and background on them, they do a great job. They do everything from firefighting apparatus to, you know, animal control to prisoner containment. So, you know, they're well versed in it.
Yeah, I mean, I guess I was just curious as to whether we had any other competitive bids or if there was anything a bit closer. Just, you know, obviously there's a delivery fee, but I can appreciate that there are probably not a ton of outfits that provide this kind of service. But it would be good to know, you know, or just have some sense for what a quote from another, you know, another upfit organization would have been.
So we looked into a variety of different vehicles, one of which was like a van conversion. And those van conversions were from out in the Midwest, I believe it was Ohio, and they all came in or around the same price for the upfit, about $18,000, but a completely different style vehicle in itself. And one of the reasons that we decided to go with the F-250 is because the elements being in the Northeast with the snow factor, we wanted a four-wheel drive vehicle. So with some ground clearance, and that's what brought us to the F-250. And in the research that I did, that was about the closest place that I could find that had a decent reputation for completing the work.
Okay, thanks. It does sound like you did some benchmarking. So, all right, so that's good. Thanks.
Didn't we have some kind of offset when we approved this from some kind of funds from someplace?
Yeah,
Yes.
all that we're approving right now is a bid waiver, so this doesn't have to go out to bid. The funding is within what they have allocated in the budget. So, and yes, there is an offset there that was coming in, but all we're approving is that they don't have to go out to competitive bids for this.
No, I know, but I was.
Yeah, Linda, it's Deb Norman. I remember last year, we were discussing this, there was something to do with someone had left money or a donation. Chief, do you remember that?
I don't want to get too far
Okay.
off of what
Sorry.
our agenda item is. which is not going back and looking at our budget that we approved. It's just going through a bid waiver. And I can send you guys the information on where we got the budget from in the morning. I'm happy to do that. But right now, we're just looking at a bid waiver.
Got it. Thanks.
Any other questions for Lieutenant Schneider on the vehicle?
Hi, this is Bob Stachin. Just a quick question, LT. I'm kind of a buy local guy, and I'm just wondering with it seems like, I mean, certainly we could get a 250 in Connecticut without a problem. It seems like it's that subsequent the additional work on it, and basically you're saying there's nobody in Connecticut that is able to provide that type of service as far as I'm looking at page 2 from the Swab Wagon Company, and the fact that no one else is able to provide those type of services in Connecticut is why we're going down to Pennsylvania for this.
Correct. So what will happen is, what I have to do is basically, it was a little confusing to me too, but basically I ordered the vehicle through MHQ out of Middletown under the contract pricing. It never even gets shipped from there. From Ford, it gets shipped directly to Swab Wagon Company. And what they do is they delete the pickup box, and then they fabricate the chassis built on the system there. And that type of work, there isn't a lot of places, especially in Connecticut, that have a decent reputation of doing it. That was probably the closest place I could find.
So we're buying the 250 out of Middletown and then sending it to Pennsylvania to get it upfitted.
Correct. Yeah, it gets right from Ford's factory. It goes straight to Pennsylvania, and from there, it get upfit and delivered to us after they're completed their work.
And that upfit work is what's not available in Connecticut. Okay, thank you.
Other questions from board members? Okay, hearing none. All in favor of approving the bid waiver as the motion as presented, say aye.
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 Any opposed? Please state your name and that you're opposed. Hearing none, the motion unanimously carries. All right, next is we have a bid waiver request for a purchase of a large format printer from Connecticut Business Systems for $25,500. Can I get a motion to approve that bid waiver request?
So moved. Deb Norman.
Deb with the motion, can I get a second?
I'll second. It's Mike.
Mike Sauerback with the second. Jim, is anyone on for this or?
I'll speak to this. Nobody's on for it, but Rogers, he's been involved in the process. So if he wants to chime in, that's fine. Essentially, I'm representing several departments here. This is a request that was in last year's SIP budget. The money's already been approved. The funding there is for $25,500 for this large format printer. It's used by several departments: the assessor, engineering, planning, public works, for various and sundry reasons, which I can't say I fully understand all that stuff. Somehow or another, I became the spokesperson. Well, the important thing is, that the board understand we went out and did our due diligence, and then I think we have a good price here. This is a $25,000 printer. There's not a lot of dealers in this state who sell these things. We want to get out a copier. We could call 100 or 200 vendors. There's only 2 people in the state I could find. Well, 2 people who in the state I could find that would sell it to us and service it with a maintenance contract. I found 2 other vendors who would sell it to us, but they wouldn't service it. It's a high-end machine, and they don't sell many of them, so you need somebody who's does this on a regular basis. And CBS Xerox, which obviously CBS is Connecticut Business Systems, or Business Machines, excuse me, CBM, sorry, CBS, yes, Connecticut Business Systems. They're supported by Xerox, a national company, worldwide company. So they're the lowest price we're going to find anywhere. Prism, I did get a price from Prism. They were, $2,400 more, and they're our current provider of our, our office copiers, and they wouldn't budge on that price. That was their basement bargain price, and we could get this from CBS Xerox for $25,000. And if you read the memo that I sent out, we went through extensive research for this. We had input from all departments that were involved. Representatives were chosen by each of the departments to go up there and actually use the machine and test it out and make sure that it meets all the users' needs and expectations. And everybody was very pleased with it. So, and I also noted on the memo that even the service, the maintenance agreement was significantly lower than Prism, which is our current copier provider. So I think it's the due diligence was done here, and that it's you guys can be assured that we're getting a very good price on this machine. And on that basis, I would ask you to approve this bid waiver. Any questions?
Any questions for Director Sullivan?
Hi, this is Bob Sachin. I just have a question. I'm still in my rookie year, so I get to ask the rookie questions. But how onerous is the? I mean, it seems all the work you've done. How onerous is going through the bid process, so that you could, to do that? I guess is to get a better understanding. I mean, you've gone out, you've gotten prices from different people. I'm just curious. What is it about the formal bidding process? And is it very expensive? Maybe there's advertisements that have to go in the newspaper, and I know those end up being thousands of dollars and other aspects. But I'm trying to get a better handle on why we wouldn't want to just put this. Why wouldn't it be easier just to put it out to bid? Thanks.
Well, it's not expensive. I mean, really, the only added cost would be public notices in the newspaper. The main thing is, well, two things. One is the time factor. As I said, this was approved in last year's SIP budget, but we held off purchasing it because of COVID-19, and we're unsure of what our tax collections would look like in this fiscal year. So we put it off until we were comfortable actually spending that money. We got approval, and the first select woman, also indicated that she would like us to approve anything that could be any expenditures that weren't absolutely necessary could be held off as long as possible, and that we should get permission before we go out and expend that money. Having said that, I was advised by Roger, who's there. He can speak to this as well. Our computer systems, and Roger can explain it better, have gone through an upgrade that they no longer interact with our present copier, our present large format printer, because it's so out of date and that it's become a urgent issue and needs to be addressed immediately, if not sooner. And number two is, if we can go out to bid, but I don't think we're going to find any bidders in Connecticut who will actually deliver the machine and service it. I called several places. I contacted two other vendors who said they would sell us the machine, but they would not service it. They would not provide a maintenance agreement, and they were both in Connecticut. One was in New Haven, a big firm, Joseph Merritt, and one was down in Fairfield County. The name escapes me, but so we might be able to go out to bid and get a cheaper machine, get the price cheaper, which I doubt, but we're not going to have a local company to service it.
Right, and we'd be able to analyze the bids, and we wouldn't always have to go for the low. If someone's not offering a service price or something like that, we would be able to assess those bids. I'm trying to get understanding of the bid process, because a lot of our meetings have to do with bid waivers. If we say tomorrow we decide, okay, we are going to go out to bid, what would be a reasonable timeline for something like this? Does it take, based on all, and I'm looking just generally, is it a 3-month process? Is it
it's a month and a half to 2 months.
Okay, so by doing this, we're saving 2 months.
Yes.
Okay.
Well, it's a month and a half to 2 months, assuming you get someone to bid on the proposal. And that is not a given.
Right, but we could do the same process of going out to people that we think would be appropriate and saying, hey, we're putting this out to bid. So it would still be a bid. It would just also include the public notice. And I think that I'm going to vote for this bid waiver. I'm on board. We've had to, especially given the COVID situation where we had to delay things. I'm just trying to get an understanding of the bid process and kind of how onerous that is, such that there's a lot of these waivers, and that's helpful, Jim. The getting an understanding of that month and a half and to 2 months kind of is a good reference point. So thank you.
I'll just add, if we go through the bid process, I don't think we're going to do any better. That's the bottom line. If you want to get drilled down to it.
Right, and I agree, but there is a bid process. There's a reason why there's a bid process, and if it seems like if we could comply with it, we should. But when there's exigent circumstances, and I believe this situation where we had to put things off because of COVID, and now the agencies are needing them, satisfies that. But I'm just trying to get a feel for sort of the government contracting process within Stonington, and whether, I've done it on the federal side, and I know it can be a year nightmare process, and I'm just trying to get an understanding of how onerous it is on this. So thank you. I appreciate it. And again, I intend to support this, but I think I wanted to get a better feel for the bidding process. So thank you, Jim.
You're welcome.
Okay, Roger wanted to make a comment. Roger?
Just so everybody has an idea, this current machine that we have is running on a Windows XP controller system, which is, as you know, is an outdated system. Microsoft does not support it. We are required, since the age of that particular controller system, to use an outdated server in our file share system. So the way the workflow is, we scan from this large format device. Not only do we print, but we scan. Building department and planning and zoning rely on this daily. They can no longer access the file share acquired by this old ancient machine because of Windows 10 just did an update recently that broke the file sharing protocol to allow us to do it to the older systems. It's done. We now have two departments who rely on this daily to scan, and they can't. So, that issue, but it's an older system anyway. It's on its last legs. It is literally no parts available. No one will service what we have, and it needs to go because we have departments that rely on it, and it's simply just a brick now.
Any other questions from Board of Finance members? Hearing none, all in favor of approving the motion for the bid waiver, say aye.
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 Any opposed, please state your name and that you're opposed. All right, motion unanimously carries. Next, could I get a motion to approve a bid waiver request from the Board of Ed for the Avaya Cloud Office, or ACO, district-wide upgrade for $58,294.85, I believe, when I totaled it.
That's correct.
Okay, can I get a motion for that, please? Thank you, Mike.
Lynn,
So moved. Bob Stachin. I'll take second.
All right, motion from Lynn and a second from Bob. Chris, are you on the line?
Yes, this is Chris Williamson.
Go ahead. Sorry, Chris, that was you earlier. My apologies. Do you want to just step through this one real quick?
Absolutely. So our current system is 8 years old. Our average lifespan, we aim to replace by 7 years. The middle and high school are currently up for replacement. The two elementary schools and the majority of district office have been replaced and upgraded with new handsets. This project would take the district from the on-premise servers. We currently have 5 servers, 1 at each site, in addition to maintenance contracts with Carousel, phone router leases with AT&T, and POTS lines with Frontier, which are the plain old telephone system lines. All of those costs total come out to be $3,000 more per year than this service contract would be. This would eliminate all of the physical infrastructure aside from the handsets in the district. This is an entirely cloud-based platform with 99.999% uptime, including maintenance windows. So it's a very reliable cloud service from a very reliable company of Ring Central. What we're requesting is use of the $58,294.85 SIP funds. The balance would be $12,387.90 after purchasing with the included 5 months free service and installation cost. And what we would use those funds for is to apply it towards cabling. The middle school has Category 3 cabling run throughout for its phones. The new phones would require Category 6 cabling. That is to the tune of $15,000. The remainder of that would come out of the current year's operating expenses for the Board of Education. Are there any questions?
So, Chris, I guess I'll ask the first question. So, being that this is a bid waiver, you guys are using the VIA server system now, and really this is just upgrading the 2 schools and the entire system to a cloud base and realizing a cost savings from that. Is that a correct statement?
That's correct. And the reason we're moving this up now, this was an anticipated SIP cost to the tune of $100,000 for next year. This would drop that down to $1. And the reason we're moving this up is because they're currently doing Q4 promotions and are very aggressive with their pricing, which right now they've already reduced the service contract by $30,000. The statement of work and the contract itself would lock us into that price. It will never go up. We can add additional lines at the fixed rate as well if we need more extensions, more handsets. That is a 5-year contract to be billed and invoiced annually with a non-appropriation clause. We of $74,000. They're giving away a free handset with every licensed user, and we have 356 phones in the district. So we would get 356 handsets given to us.
Mr. Chairman, if I may, I had a conversation with Chairman Tedisco, and he explained this to me as the savings that's represented here by Mr. Wilson. I firmly support this, having tried at times to call the school system and phone was down. So I think this is a make sense proposition.
Yes, I would say 2 to 3 times a year, we currently experience a phone outage. This would move everything to IP-based, and with all of the network infrastructure improvements we've made over the years, we currently experience a 99.99% uptime for our internet connection.
Other questions from board members?
Hi, it's Mike Fauerbach. Chris, thanks for the overview. I mean, it certainly seems attractive. Glad to see, we'd be fixed at these rates for 5 years. I'm just kind of curious, though, what happens after the 5th year? I mean, is there an opportunity for automatic renewal at a certain increased rate? Or are we, potentially locked into this infrastructure at that point in time and have to continue with them? Can you just run me through what a scenario or two might look like after 5 years?
Sure. So after 5 years, and that's typically when you start scheduling the refresh as it is, you never want to extend a service contract longer for hardware. So after 5 years, we have the option to, forklift, so to speak, the environment over to another vendor. A lot of these handsets that we get are cross-compatible with multiple vendors, such as Cisco, Ring Central, Avaya, et cetera. So at that time, we can evaluate the schools at that time would be approaching 8 years old as it is. So we would start to look at new hardware anyways. So we kind of open the doors at that point and start exploring other options, or we can stick with them and give them the caveat, Avaya that is, if you keep our rates fixed, we can continue and do annual or 3-year contracts at that time.
All right, so it sounds like you're very comfortable with where the situation we'd be in at the end of 5 years.
Yes, absolutely.
Okay, thanks.
Other questions from members? None? Okay. All in favor of approving the bid waiver for the Board of Ed for the phone system, please say aye.
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 Any opposed, please state your name and that you're opposed. All right, that unanimously passes. Thank you, Chris, appreciate it.
Thank you.
All right, next item on the agenda is discussion of federal grant available for replacement of electronics on the SPD patrol boat. Who's this? Lieutenant Schneider, back up again.
So, it's Brian Schneider with the Police Department. I just wanted to bring everybody up to speed as to why we applied for this grant and some of the costs associated with it. There's really 4 main reasons why we opted to apply for this grant. I approached the chief and I told him we have a fairly new police boat that's going on 7 to 8 years old now, going into its 8th season next season. One of the first reasons was our infrared camera on the top of the boat, which is about a $20,000 piece of equipment. It's been glitchy ever since we bought the boat. It's already been shipped back out to California for a refurb. It's come back. We still had some minor issues with it here and there. I get nervous about that when we have refurb equipment back on the boat, and we've had consistent minor issues with it along the way, especially at $20,000 to replace. Secondly, our encrypted AIS, which are automated identification system that interfaces with the Coast Guard itself, is becoming obsolete. The L3 unit that we have on the boat now, that allows us, or the Coast Guard, to see us when we're out on the water in an encrypted way. The software has become obsolete. They don't have a plan to replace it. We have to move to replace that at about $5,000 soon anyway if we want to keep that interoperability with the Coast Guard. Finally, the updated electronics on the boat, when we transitioned to Ray Marine just signed a contract with the Coast Guard to put all Ray Marine products on their vessels. This, again, expand some interoperability because we're part of a bigger London Marine group, and we're often on the water for search and rescue outside the towns or the waters of Stonington. So we're constantly on the Sound, Block Island Sound, Fisher's Island Sound, even out as far as Long Island Sound. And part of that is that with the new Marine product, it allows the Coast Guard to drop search coordinates that they would like us to look at right onto our chart plotters on our boat via Bluetooth. So that allows us to work with them a little bit easier. They can track us, follow us, and they can quickly establish where we've already searched. So there's a lot of things that were coming down the line that were going to cost us probably close to $25,000 to start to look at repairing them or replacing them depending on their failure rate. And also to keep up and maintain the interoperability with the Coast Guard, we wanted to see how it looked to transition to Ray Marine products. I went and got a quote from a local vendor here in town. They've done a lot of the work for neighboring agencies that have marine assets on the water. We were looking at close to $50,000 to replace all the electronics on the boat. And the reason I say all the electronics is because when you start replacing parts of it, you're starting to get these interfaces and mishmash equipment and things don't work right. So I wanted to see what the total package was going to cost. Through the Marine Group, I applied for a FEMA grant and was awarded it for $50,000. There is a cost share associated with it. So federally, they're going to cover the $37,500. Locally here, the town's going to be responsible for $12,500. Now, I think a lot of that $12,500 could be subsidized by the a trade-in amount or auctioning off of existing equipment that, although it's obsolete to us or growing outdated in our field, for the civilian or anybody else on the water, it's still completely operable and has plenty of life left in it. So I think a substantial portion of that, and we've had some early talks about what we could get from that from some local vendors here, putting that at around between $4,000 and anywhere $7,000 from the equipment that we're removing. So that'll take a portion of that, and there may be some money left over in our operating budget under the maintenance this year to cover the remaining balance on the cost share. However, it is a 3-year grant cycle, so we have 3 years to spend the money. Basically, today was just an introduction as to why we decided to apply for the grant and what was coming down the line. If anybody has any questions for me, I'd be happy to answer them.
I'll open it up to any questions from members. Mr.
Lieutenant
Chairman.
Snyder,
Go ahead,
Was
Lynn.
did I understand you to say then that we don't need it right this second? We just apply for the grant now?
I applied for the grant, yes, this summer, and was awarded to the town as of September 1st. But it is a 3-year grant cycle. So all of the equipment is functioning on the boat now. We have 3 years up until I don't know the exact date, the end date somewhere on here, but 3 years from the start. So I think it's like August of 2023, which we'd have to close it out. We would lose the money at that point. But at this time, there's ways to pay for the $12,500 cost share that I'd be happy to work out and present to you at a further date. I just wanted to bring you up to speed as to where we are now.
Okay, but you're not asking us for additional money or anything like that now?
No, absolutely not.
Lynn, what we would do at the end of the fiscal year, if we started to see that we had any excess money in account, we would come back to the Board of Finance and see about a line item transfer to cover that. Lacking that, we have the technology fund in the SIP account that I believe still has $40,000 in it that we were still using for some of the radio related equipment. So I would, if we had to, because it's such a good deal with the federal government paying for a good chunk of this, to ask to use that money as well. So we wouldn't be asking for an additional appropriation, we'd be using existing funds. And there is going to be hopefully an offset of almost 50% of that if we sell it. Granted, it more than likely has to go back in the general fund with a sale of that, or go out to bid with the old equipment. But at least there's some money coming back in for that, so it's even a better deal than it looks like.
Okay. I'm not trying to belabor the point, but there's going to be a lot of expenses for the PD coming down the pike shortly, right?
Yes.
Mr. Chairman, let me reduce this to its simplest form. We're going to get $50,000 worth of equipment for $12,500, and we may be able to pay for this out of existing funds. Seems like a no-brainer to me. I would act sooner than later, particularly to preserve interoperability with our brethren of the seagoing services.
Well, Glenn, it should be even cheaper than that, right? Once they trade in the equipment. Yeah. So it's probably
It'll be even less.
$6,000. Yeah. But so yeah, no, it certainly sounds like a good deal again. So that's great to hear. Sorry, again, this is Mike Falbeck speaking. I did have one question over probably Chief Stewart, just around. I'm just curious, how often is that boat out on patrol, or is it really only in response to an incident? Can you just give us a better sense for the actual operations of that vessel?
Yes to all of those. There is a schedule that we do the best we can to get officers out on the boat. Obviously, with COVID, we had a little concern of having 2 officers together on the vessel because we're required to have 2 people on the boat. But we do have it go out if there's an emergency, and we have people that are available that know how to operate it. It's gone out. It's been there at some of the bigger events that are unfortunate events that happen out there. We've had to go out to Fisher's Island to assist. A variety of different things going on. We had a big boat parade that happened just a while ago with, I guess, close to 1,000 boats in the Mystic River. And that worked out well with the Coast Guard and our neighbors. And with this equipment, it certainly would help. And sort of a kudos again to the Board of Finance for supporting our state radio system. We were able to use that we're able to communicate with 6 different agencies seamlessly without a problem, and it worked out very well for that. So we just try to stay ahead of the curve when it comes to the technology end of it. The boat is a big asset for the town with the amount of people out on the water. We're constantly being asked by the harbor commissions to be out there, to have people out on the boat, to sort of wave the flag because there's so much activity out on the water. And if you look at the amount of money that is out there in the boats, equipment, and the water is also unforgiving out there. So if somebody's in trouble out there, you have to have the equipment to go out there. And kudos to Lieutenant Schneider that coordinates with all the area departments, including the fire departments in town, to have the resource out there and available. And it's really a great asset to have in the community. So I hope I answered that.
Yep, no, that's helpful. Thanks. But it doesn't sound like it's not necessarily a regular schedule. There's not a regular patrol schedule with the boat.
No, not when you have the demands of summer and the amount of tourism, et cetera, that we have. So we have to balance that off with also the special events that we have. But we shoot for at least once a week, if not more, depending on what the activities are out on the water.
Okay, thanks.
Any other questions from members?
No, thanks for doing that.
You're welcome. Thank you.
All right, yeah, thanks, Lieutenant Schneider. Next item on the agenda is discussion of development and funding of new police department policy manual to adhere to the new police accountability pronouncement. Chief, I think this is you, right?
Yeah, at the last Board of Police Commission meeting, they approved the Daigle Law Group, and hopefully you received some of the information from Attorney Eric Daigle. Attorney Daigle is known throughout not only Connecticut, but around the country as being one of the leading experts in policy development, especially when it comes to use of force. Part of the new law that came out recently was that each police department in the state of Connecticut has to be CALEA certified, which is a national accreditation, which is a monumental task that very few police departments in Connecticut right now have obtained. And it is probably a couple-year process because it has to do with redoing all your policies. It could even include some issues with the infrastructure of the PD, as well as charter changes, potentially a variety of different things without jumping in too deep. But the first start of this would be to have somebody come on board to assist us with the policies so that they meet the standards of CALEA or the Post Academy, the Police Academy, because they also have a accreditation body there as well, to ensure that all of our policies in today's day and age are meeting the standards out there, especially when it comes to use of force, investigations on misconduct, a variety of different areas that are very important in today's day and age, are always important. And to have an attorney that has been vetted and nationally known to assist in that, I think is a big plus. Plus, I believe that we're going to have a number of police departments in the state of Connecticut lining up for his services as we get closer. And I'd rather be first out of the box than to be last and struggling to figure out how we're going to satisfy all the policy requirements that continue to come down from the state. So with that, the Board of Police Commissioners were very supportive. They did talk with Attorney Daigle at their last meeting on the Zoom call or WebEx call, and they basically agreed to ask the Board of Finance to come before you that to move some of the money that we have in our school safety and reserve officer or special officer account to hire Attorney Daigle to start the process. He obviously is going to bill on a monthly basis depending on what it's going to take, and this is really the first bite at the apple here. So it's approximately $20,000 and to get the ball rolling with this. But I think it's very important that we do that. Our reserve force right now is down to 2 officers. And obviously with COVID and the school not meeting the way it has, so we have not utilized a lot of that funding that we normally would in typical years. So I believe that we have some money that is there and available to get him up and running and started in these particular areas that are very important in today's day and age. It's coming. We have to do it. We have to do it by 2025. So I'd rather get a jump on it, get him on board, and have him in the queue as one of the first police departments. He already has a bunch in Connecticut, but I think he's going to have quite a few lining up here in short order. Just to give you a background with accreditation, the ones that do national accreditation is usually a volunteer program, and it is monumental. It takes years of policies and inspections. You have accreditation people come out and inspect your policies, look at your building, look at your facilities, look at every aspect of policing in your community, and it takes a long time. So many police departments have a unit with anywhere from 1 to 5 people in it, just doing that on a regular basis. We are not large enough to take somebody off the road on a full-time basis for 2 years or longer just to sit and develop policy. And plus, we would have to probably send it to an attorney anyways to ensure that it's meeting the standards. And he has guarantees that come along with that about meeting accreditation standards. And he works very closely with police departments, the Chiefs Association, et cetera. So I think it's money well spent that we're going to end up spending anyways down the line to meet the standards that have come out. And I'm glad to entertain any questions about that.
Chief, I got a question.
Certainly.
It's Lynn. So it's $20K to start the thing, and then it's done on an hourly basis. If you had to guess, what do you think this thing is going to cost?
Well, it's all. I think by the time we're done, it's probably going to be closer to 50,000. So I'm going to put a line item, and I know Jim Sullivan's on the line. So in our up and coming budget, I'm going to add a line item in our operating budget of accreditation, and probably put 15,000 in it year one. And then as we keep going further down the line, and what it's going to take to get us to a point where we're meeting those standards.
But it's more than just the policy and procedures, right? You said that there might also have to be some structural and infrastructure.
That is in tier 2 and 3 of accreditation. So usually the first thing out of the box is liability issues, mostly use of force and disciplinary actions, things like that, that are sort of high liability areas. And then you get those taken care of. That's usually tier 1. Then you move on to tier 2, which is facilities. And it has to do with dispatch as well, on how you dispatch, how you, your holding cells, et cetera, and how you do certain things with that. So it's pretty comprehensive. That's why it's a heavy lift. It is an extremely heavy lift.
Is it more about how you do things, or are they going to tell us your holding cells are a foot too short? You got to build a new,
I hope that does not happen because we have, granted, our building now is 21 years old, but it's done right. And it is still considered one of the premier facilities. So I do not envision a lot of changes. There may be some minor things that we have to do, but I don't think like camera systems that they're being installed now. So there's certain things that you have to have like that certain departments that don't have cameras at every corner. We're a little bit better off when it comes to that than I think many PDs. So from an infrastructure point of view, I don't anticipate anything large just because of the work that is done by many of our predecessors before us to give us something that look to the future. So I don't really anticipate much of that.
But this is an unfunded mandate related to 6004, right?
Yes.
Absolutely.
And Chief, this is David Motherway. This is just the proposal. I assume that there's some sort of contract that follows.
It should be really on there because there's a signatory page on there about the police consulting services.
It was pretty clear. It was pretty comprehensive.
Yeah, and then there was about a 40-page document about developing constitutional and effective policies, what they didn't teach you at the police academy. So basically, he outlined certain chapters of a rules and regulation manual that he would jump into right away. That would include, let's say, organization and management, rules of conduct, disciplinary procedures, patrol
No, I
functions.
saw that.
Well,
I
yeah.
read through it, Chief. The reason I'm asking is the one thing I didn't see in here anywhere was that you own the end result, right? Like literally, it doesn't say anywhere that you own the digital artifacts, et cetera, as a result. It says you can review them. It says several other things, but nowhere in here does it say that you end up with the ownership and the end product that I could find. And then the only other thing I'd say is on page 8, that you have a T put in there just so that that's not construed as an extra zero. And I support it 1,000%.
Yeah, there was one other typo in there. I'm trying to remember where it was that we had to correct. So I appreciate that. As far as owning it, it's a policy manual. So policy manual, it's going to be written. So we're going to receive a product that we're going to have because we have to adopt these policies. The Board of Police Commissioners are going to have to see every chapter. Going to have to review them and make sure it fits. And actually, I do have to assign somebody to assist Attorney Daigle and his staff to customize these to ensure that it's not just a boilerplate, that it does meet not only the standards of CLEAR and state accreditation, but also is a fit for us too. You want to make sure that the policies are understandable and that they make sense and are practical out on the street, not just a piece of paper. So there's going to be a degree of customization. Groton Town went through this a number of years ago with Attorney Daigle, and they're pretty happy. I have not heard one bad thing about what he's done, how he's done it, and he is considered an expert in all aspects of this. Actually, today both lieutenants were on a training with him talking about use of force issues around the state. So,
Chief, wouldn't a lot of that stuff? Wouldn't a lot of that stuff be boilerplate in effect? Because there's 169 towns. Whoever's got a PD or a police department of their own, use of force is the same, isn't it? All over the place.
It all depends on what equipment you have, what type of area you're policing. Some police departments have SWAT teams, some have nothing, some have to call in other people. It's also part of the new law too has to do with crowd control. How do you control crowds? How big a crowd it could be, et cetera. So there's a variety of different things today. And to have an attorney that has reviewed it, looked at it, and is guaranteeing it's meeting those standards is big, especially if you have to go to court on any of these nowadays, that you have somebody like that that's behind you 100% when it comes to what he assisted you in writing and helping out. We went down this road a number of years ago, and it was just monumental. It was you know, PDs are taking people off the road, hiring another lieutenant, hiring another captain, and that's all they do. 100% of their time is locked in a room developing policy. I would rather not do it piecemeal, one here, one there. I'd rather just do a clean slate. Say, here, we're adopting 15 new chapters. This is what it is, and we have a computer program called Power DMS that officers can go in. They have to read, sign, have the ability to review, have the ability to ask questions, and that way, if we have to update anything, that's another thing that Attorney Daigle does. If there's a new law that comes out that changes, like use of force or a policy that he has developed, he can push that right out to us immediately and say, hey, I gave you something 2 years ago. It's no longer in effect. We had to change something. Here you go. And that, I think that's important.
So this should protect the town from liability and officers too.
Correct. Yes, absolutely.
Yeah.
And you have to do it anyway by 2025.
Let me Lynn, let me just say one thing real quick, okay? This is really akin to companies who manufacture or provide services getting ISO certified. All it means is that you've reviewed your policies and you have written documentation that you're following this and an ability to show training. It is, I read through his proposal. It is the exact same my company did to get ISO certified. And by getting ISO certified, you get a quality standard that you admit that you're holding yourself to. I see nothing but a positive coming from this. And I don't, when the chief says there might be, infrastructure changes, really that's administrative more than anything else, because what they got to do is tailor this to what we're doing now. It's not that your cells are a foot too short. That's not the standard. The standard is, do you have it documented, and are you following it? And are you self-auditing that you're following it? As I'm sure, I didn't see that in here, but that's in every normal training and policy manual. And I mean, this is no different than every company probably in Stonington who's above 20 employees is doing this exact same thing.
I'm not arguing the point. I understand that we need it. I get it. I'm just, one of the things that he was making the case about in the documentation you provided was, in terms of ultimate cost here, was, whether or not we had a fully fleshed out policy and procedures manual to begin with, and how much customization he was going to have to do. That was really the nature of my question. So
that was in my company's problem, was figuring out how little we had to start with, really, and then got our eyes open. And it really, we worked on it solid for a year. I did most of the writing, and I hated every minute of it. But, at the end of the day, we've been ISO certified for like 15 years now. And once you get it in place, it's easy to go. It really is. The heavy lift is now. And I'm fully on board, Chief, with hiring him to come in, because you're right. You shouldn't write it yourself the first go round. You're not going to get it right. So moving from someone who's already done it, I was happy to hear that it was Groton Town had used them as well. That provides you a degree of security that you're getting who knows what they're doing, and we can move. And it's money well spent, I think.
Well, it's money we have to spend. It's irrelevant, really, right? We have to do it.
This is our existing manual right here in written form that we do have on a stick as well, on a memory stick, but it has 48 chapters right now. And it goes a variety of different things, including the Marine Patrol, a variety of stuff, including what we'd have to do with body cameras, even, that I think we're going to talk about in a few minutes, about the review of those, et cetera. So there's a lot of movement in police work right now, and a lot of change, and a lot of requirements that are coming down. Even our academy recently did, it's called the CLESP standard, Connecticut Law Enforcement Policy System. I'm trying to remember what the last part of it was, but we just got audited for the second time by the police academy to ensure that we had certain policies in place, such as a complaint procedure, that our use of force standards was up to date and current, and a variety of other different standards that are out there. So this is being constantly looked at, constantly evaluated, and I don't see it changing for the near future. So this is the trend right now, that we have to get down these roads, and for the right reasons, to ensure that we're doing things the correct way, that in the legal way, that whatever the law or the land is at this particular time, that we're following that, and also we have good guidance to the officers when they're out there.
I understand that. I'm just trying to keep a ledger of the unfunded mandate cost.
And this is Jim Sullivan, Chief, just so contradict me if I'm wrong, but in January, after the first of the year, you will be coming to the Board of Finance to transfer that first $20,000 from line items.
Correct.
To make for professional services in your budget. Okay, thank you.
Correct. I'd like to, as long as if they're agreeable right now, I'm going to try and get him on board sooner than later, because I don't want to be 10th, 12th, 20th, 50th in line, and then we're not getting the service. I'd rather be one of the first ones out of the box.
Chief, how long do you think it'll take?
Go ahead, Deb.
Yeah, how long do you think it'll take if you had to estimate?
4 years.
4 years. Okay, thank you.
Chief, this is Bob Stachin. I looked over. I support this. We got to get the ducks in a row, and it makes sense. I guess my question is, and I looked over the white paper and all the resources that he used and all the people invited to his conference in that white paper were all retired or active law enforcement. And my question is the ability to get other voices into this discussion as we establish policies and to be able to respond, to respond that this is a community policing effort. I mean, would we be able to say that as far as that there's community involvement in establishing these policies? And is there an organization that we could coordinate with that could be a part of this, or that Attorney Daigle works with to get that community voice involved? I know the Department of Justice has the community oriented policing services, which reopened their micro grants program and is awarding grants. And maybe there's money, you got $50,000 worth of boat equipment for for $6,000. So I'm impressed with that. And I'm just wondering if that sort of effort to get more voices involved in establishing these policies would make it palatable and also make it, give the community a sense of involvement in the process.
On a couple of fronts.
Chief, let me jump in for one quick second. That's really a question for the Board of Police Commission, not for the Board of Finance. So we're looking at the cost of this. And I'd be fully supportive of having a liaison to the Police Commission talk about that, fully on board with that. But I think it's unfair to the chief to put that on this table when we're just looking at the cost that we're looking at now. And this was just an overview of the cost. So I want to make sure we stay focused on cost and what we got to do and why we got to do it, not that. So I hope that makes sense, Bob.
It doesn't. I would like the chief to, I think it's a fair question. He was ready to respond to it. We're putting this issue out here. I don't think it's as narrowly interpreted as that. And I think that getting an understanding of the voices that are going to establish these policies, I think, is a fair question at this point.
Well, it's 2 points. 2 points right out of the box, Bob, is that A, you have the Attorney Daigle that is around the country, and this is what he does. This is what has his hand on the pulse of many of the departments around the country, around the state, what they're going through, what's going on, as well as court decisions. Many policies that we have, especially when it comes to use of force or anything along that type of line, is dictated by either state statute or by Supreme Court or state Supreme Court decisions. And that's why he's involved. The other process of any policy that we have in the police department, it has to be vetted by our Board of Police Commissioners. So when you have a public oversight board that will look at that, see it, and then vote on whether they're going to adopt that policy, that gives the public an opportunity, if they want to come in and comment about a particular policy, they'd be able to see it and certainly voice whatever concern they have, or whether they like it, dislike it, or anything along that line. That is your representatives, is the Board of Police Commission, as civilians that are overseeing the police department.
Yeah, I just think in these times when there is sort of an increase again, and I support getting policies in place, and I think it's important, and we want, but I think that it creates this process creates an opportunity, which is not simply the town making sure that it's avoiding liability and police. I think that's an important goal, but I also think this creates an opportunity to demonstrate sort of the relationship, community policing principles, and I wouldn't want to lose that opportunity. I don't look at it as a negative. Certainly we need to get the policies in place. I think there's an opportunity there to be able to demonstrate an openness. And I would, and more than, if there are organizations that people want to be involved in the process, I think that could be valuable. And I just would ask you to at least take that into consideration as you move forward. This is such an early stage in the process. that is there something more than just, well, when we develop it, you can come to the Board of Commissioners meeting? Is there a way to get more voices at the table on these policies earlier than that? And I would just ask you to consider whether there are ways to do it. Because again, Attorney Daigle is a retired state officer. So again, it's all from that voice, and it's an important voice. And I think we should have, smart people, who have experience doing this without a doubt. And I support that. But I would just ask you to consider whether this is also an opportunity to demonstrate transparency and openness to the community and bring more voices in.
I think, if I could be wrong, because it's been a number of years that I actually went over the CLIA standards, but there are certain wayfinding times in your process with CLIA that you have public hearings, so to speak, so that people are aware of what you're doing, how you're doing it, have an opportunity to jump in. That's part of the standards that I believe are out there. Again, it's been way too many years since I looked at that and had to jump in on that. But I know, because once in a while I will get a notice from a particular community that they are having a public opportunity to talk on accreditation. So I think there are going to be finding points along the way that's going to end up having to happen.
Okay, thank you.
And if I can just add, as part of the policy development manual that he provided, that Attorney Daigle provided, on page 33, there's a section about moral versus legal obligation, and in it, it specifically states that the respective policies must address community expectations and not simply contain minimal legal requirements. So in reading that, I took it that he was acutely and keenly aware of exactly what you're saying, Bob. So I think in his manual he's already provided, it provides the framework around that kind of a thing. So
and I did see that, but I thought there's the word community is mentioned 6 times in that 45-page document, because I went and looked for that to try to find what sort of input there would be. I did see that community expectations reference, but I thought that I just think there's an opportunity for more to demonstrate openness and to bring them in. I didn't see from his proposal how that happens, and it just seems like to bring people in earlier and bring those voices rather than just saying, here's a policy we developed after 4 years. Do you like it or not? I think that's a way to do it, and perhaps that applies. But maybe this is an opportunity to demonstrate that we do go above and beyond in certain ways, and I didn't see that reflected in the proposal. And I would just ask the chief to consider that and to see if there are ways to integrate that sort of input so that we can say there were, we had numerous people involved in the process, not just retired law enforcement, but also other voices that are relevant to this discussion. I think it could end up with a better work product.
Yeah, okay, I appreciate that. Given I'm hearing a sense of the board that we're in support of the chief engaging with Attorney Daigle and to move forward, and that given in January, we'd be able to do that, but the chief can feel confident in engaging earlier to start the process. If anyone feels differently, could you let me know at this point? But I think, all we're looking at is opinion right now, not a cold hard fact.
I definitely think the sense of the board, I concur with you, Mr. Chairman. I think that the chief has confidence that he will get that transfer done in January to engage the Daigle Group. Makes a lot of sense.
Now, I want you guys to do what you need to protect yourselves.
Thank you.
All right, very good. We'll move on to the next agenda item, body camera update. Lieutenant Schneider or Chief? Which one is giving the body camera?
Well, sort of both of us, I think, but Lieutenant Schneider has been doing the bulk of the work with the different vendors and different meetings that we have. And shout out not only to him, but Roger has had to have a big part. Roger Kaiser had a big part in this because of the technology end of it and what it means in the PD as far as a complete shift on how we do some of the business here as far as recording and cameras. There are really two big camera companies out there right now, WatchGuard and Axon. So we've met with both of them, had different quotes from them, and discussed the pros and cons. We've been to Groton Town Police Department, who went to Axon. I know New London Police Department just went to them as well, and a variety of different things along this. This is not a cheap undertaking by any stretch. There is technology issues that come with this, as well as freedom of information and redaction and how you distribute videos to the public, etc. So it's a whole new system, if you want to call it, of work here that we are getting ready for, that we're actually not going to have any option. And we're headed this way anyways. We have 3 cameras out there right now that are loaners that Axon gave to us to try, and seems to be working very well out in the field and what it means for us as a police department. So what happens is the cost is very interesting. We usually, as you know, try and go from a point of negotiating, especially like with the radio system, and we go back to the manufacturer. We treat the money like it's our own. In this case, we're mandated by law now, so our wiggle room and our negotiation ability is gone because they know you're going to have to buy it, and you really have only 2 or 3 big vendors that are going to offer the support and also the technology that you can interface with other departments, the court system, etc. So Lieutenant Schneider has a group of officers that he put together inside the PD, as well as Roger, as well as one of the police commissioners. And they've gone over the different products out there, met with the vendors, discussed pricing, and we're just starting to talk turkey, so to speak, with the vendors on figuring out how much this muffler is going to cost us. And it's not going to be cheap. Out of the box here for the law requires not only body cameras, but certain marked vehicles, like your black and white vehicles out there, the ones on patrol, you have to have an in-car video system. So the in-car video system right now is $170,000. The body camera system itself is $440,000. So it's $610,000 that we're looking at right now. The state has, in the Public Act, supposed to provide 30% reimbursement. That's with the, I guess, the assumption that the state is going to have the money to do that. That would take out, math in my head a little bit, 180-ish out. So roughly 430, 425 looks like would be the final bill to the town. Axon, who we are certainly looking at the closest, has a 5-year period that you could break it into 5 years, with the bulk being in 1 year or 2 years, 3 years, whatever, however you want to slice it or dice it, or in one big payment. I think with the state doing the 30% reimbursement, if you do it in one payment, I think you get the 30%. If you break it up, I'm not sure how they would adjust that. I can continue to talk with OPM on what their expectations are going to be of different communities and how they would hopefully reimburse. So today's goal is really, is to let the Board of Finance know this is coming. This is state law. We have to do it. And again, just like with Attorney Daigle, the sooner the better, because more than 50% of the police departments in Connecticut do not have body cameras and dash cameras. So they're going to be lining up to with the different vendors to get this equipment and get them installed and up and running. So I think at some point in time, and it's an open discussion on when do we do this. It's obviously going to be in the SIP budget coming up for the next fiscal year, but whether we start to get down this road earlier for some of the purchases or how we're going to do this. And I know maybe later on in the fiscal year that we look at it and where we stand. But again, this is coming. It has a lot of things that we have to deal with within the police department, not only from Roger's point of view, technology, but also from a records point of view with personnel. And Groton Town Police Department hired a retired police officer that had records experience, and he is doing basically video redaction and records oversight full-time for Groton Town Police Department right now because of the amount of information that has to go out. So don't forget, if you have 3 officers at a scene, and you will now have 3 cameras, you'll have 3 cars. And if there's a juvenile there or a crime victim, you have to be able to redact that information. You have to be able to transmit it possibly to the court system if they want it. If it's a DWI, you do have to transmit it to the court. You have to save it. And you have to hold on to them for a number of years per our state library requirements. So it's another big task that we have ahead of us here with this new technology.
Chief, I got a question.
Sure.
Those numbers that you were quoting, the 610 before the hopefully not illusory 30% contribution from the state, that doesn't include IT, does it?
No.
That's just the hardware.
It's the hardware, the cameras, it's the support that they have, the cloud. All the videos are now, basically you have a body camera that's on your chest, and at the end of your shift, you come in and you plop it into a docking station. It then downloads onto the cloud and onto a server. Mm-hmm. With that, you're able to bring that video up. Officers in the field can tag certain calls that they're on, especially ones, motor vehicle stops, certain incidents that are out there, so that they have them for the future and can refer back and save them. And it does not include the IT support or the record support in there. No, they're part of the dollar amount here includes the cloud, includes their end of everything. So it's really soup to nuts other than our personnel. So
just building off that, Mike, I'm curious, do you have any sense for what the annual maintenance costs are? The one-time costs are a bit to swallow, but I also worry about what is this going to add to your budget on an annual basis or Roger's budget on an annual basis? Do we have any sense for?
It looks like going forward, it's about $48,000 a year.
So that's included in the, I'm sorry, Chief, it's Brian Schneider with the police department again for everybody. Those quotes that we got are for a 5-year term. They call it a TAP program, but basically what it does is assures you have 100% coverage on all your hardware. So in 2.5 years, your body cams are going to be obsolete. There's going to be new technology out there that's going to benefit us. In 2.5 years, Taser's going to give you all new body cams. In 5 years, they're going to give you all new in-car cameras. And every 5 years, you have to re-up on their program. They're projecting a 3 to 5% increase every 5 years if you do that. In that 5 years, you get a full 100% warranty. Something breaks, you send it back to them, they immediately send something back out to you. And in that is covered your cloud costs, all your warranty costs. So the quotes that we got are a 5-year term. And after 5 years, we'll have to re-up the contract with Axon or whoever we choose. And part of that is the replacement cost of hardware at certain intervals so that you're always operating on decent equipment.
So let me make sure my feeble brain has got this straight.
Sure. Yeah.
So let's say it's 610 is a 5-year contract.
It's a 5-year.
So you're really looking at 130, 140 a year if you were to amortize it over the full 5 years.
Correct. And what they do is they give you the opportunity, with the exception of the in-car camera. The in-car camera, they break down into 5 equal payments. For some reason, on the body camera side, and I still haven't gotten a clear answer on this, they can front load that first year. So, state reimbursement, that would be helpful to front load as much as we could onto that first year. And then after that, it's divided out. And part of that is all of those annual maintenance
Those annual maintenance and upgrade, upkeep, up those costs,
Upgrade,
yep.
great service. From what we understand with the company that we're looking at now, it's unbelievable with the services they provide, but it comes at obviously.
Right, sure.
But basically then the state wants us to prepay for a contract in order to get the reimbursement? Is that what I'm understanding? Because in year one, you get the 30 and then it declines from there? So are they trying to get us to prepay for a 5-year contract ahead of time?
No, they just want, if you're purchasing certain things, they will pay 30% of it. So they're going to pay for the cameras, the storage, and the infrastructure. So some of the stuff
Anyway.
right? Yeah.
All right.
I don't think they're going to say, okay, your maintenance is this year. We're going to give you 30% of that money. I think we're going to be lucky to get the 30% on the hardware.
I agree.
And the stuff. So, can I make a recommendation, Chairman O'Brien? Is that one member of the Board of Finance, because we have one member of the Board of Police Commissioners, when we do meet with the vendors, to come on out and take a look, and we can certainly schedule that around whoever that may be, and also to take a look at the sort of this breakdown of the numbers and what best fits us as a town and the Board of Finance when it comes to what is the best formula for how we're going to fund this and under what timetable, so that we have an idea about moving forward. And also we have a little homework to do with that number, because I did notice a few things in there that we may not want to purchase, or we may want to purchase. That's going to be up to further discussions with the Board of Police Commissioners and the committee that we have together. But I certainly would invite a Board of Finance member to be part of the committee, because it has such an impact on the community for the future, and a lot of money attached to it.
Sure, I appreciate that, Chief. What I'm going to say is we'll commit to having a Board of Finance member there, and I will offline take people who are interested, because I think it may be more than a couple, and we'll try and figure out amongst us how we get it down to one, because I don't want to overwhelm you as well, because we can have 12 different opinions and with 6 different people. So. Yeah, we'll definitely participate in that happily, and I appreciate the offer to allow us to be there from the get-go, and then we'll figure out amongst ourselves how we can best do that and solve that.
Please listen.
I think there's going to be a lot of people who want to be part of that, though. So we will take that offline, and for sure we'll have someone there, Chief. And
Thank you.
How soon are you thinking that might happen, Chief?
Lieutenant Schneider, you had a conversation with one of the vendors about 2 weeks ago. So certainly we have to do a little talk turkey with them when it comes to some of the numbers. So I would say either before Christmas or soon after Christmas would be in order.
Okay, so we'll get on this real quick here, and we'll make sure who it is, and I'll identify it to you within the next week, let's say.
Okay, thank you. Appreciate it.
Any other questions for the Chief or Lieutenant Schneider about the body cameras?
Thank you.
Thank you.
All right. Thank you, guys. Appreciate the updates and everything.
Thank you.
All right. The next item on the agenda is the Campbell Grain Mill site update. I am just looking at a text that I have here from the first selectman. And right now, the selectmen are leaning towards putting out the tax abatement proposal in early January. That just was approved by Ledge Light, that they are able to do a town meeting as of right now. Obviously, we all know that can change tomorrow, but that is the word as of right now. And the final draft of the proposed tax abatement should be out early next week, which I will then get and circulate to all of you. As I remind you, we actually, as the Board of Finance, don't have to be part of that discussion, but the selectmen are nicely engaging with us. And I will say that I have had very high regard for the new assessor and her input to this process on one of the calls that I was on about this, where I think that her concerns in terms of tax revenue, there's now an ability to abate the taxes for 10 years. Prior it was 7 was the max. And the concerns about 10 years of abatement is a big concern, and what staging for the abatement is happening. So I have not seen a final draft. There was a bunch of asks, and they have not been answered that I have seen as of yet. So I don't have a lot to tell you other than they're looking at, and right now there's nothing agreed on. There has been no vote or anything from the selectmen about it will be early January, but that's what they are leaning towards right now. And they're excited about getting that property, something moving on that with that. So I know that's not much of an update, but I don't know. I got word from the first selectman as I was reading that she's dialed in. So I don't know if Danielle, if you want to add anything. I don't know, Roger, do you see her? You might have to hit *3, Danielle.
Hey, Tim, while she's connecting or doing whatever, you said that we might, you on now,
There you
Danielle?
go.
We're looking at a town meeting in January?
No, so I just want to clarify that it's going to be a virtual town meeting, but we're planning to go right to a referendum, and that's what Ledgelight cleared with me today. So basically, like an election, we'll vote most likely on it. So we're meeting with the registrars tomorrow, but the town meeting where people would physically gather in a room is still virtual. But the proposal on the table is to put it out to a referendum so people can vote. Absentee ballots will still be able to be gotten at town hall. They can't be mailed in, so people can use absentee ballots. And given the safety measures that were in place for the election, Ledgelight felt like this would be an okay option for early January.
Better take sharp objects away from Cindy. Okay.
She already gave us a thumbs up. They were very nice about it.
Okay. And Danielle, what kind of dollar amount are we talking about for this abatement?
So that's still being worked out. And like Tim mentioned, we had given the developers a deadline of early next week to get us kind of a final proposal. And our new director of assessment is wonderful, and she's been great working with them. So, but basically, in summary, the numbers obviously can change based on the mill rate over the course of 10 years and all these other kind of smaller factors. But the number we're most likely looking at is somewhere around that $600,000 mark because of what the state likes to see in terms of a local match. So it's based on the proposal of the project and how much they're charging for rent for the apartments, and they basically break that down. They look for a certain percentage from a local match. So other towns might have a land bank or a local nonprofit or a dedicated line item to this, or they might have a nonprofit. The Spruce Meadows example, they were a nonprofit, so they were able to do it directly. The Thread Mill, though, went through the same process years ago. So this is kind of our form of a local match that the state does look for. So to leverage the $19 million for state funding for the project, they need about this $600,000 over the course of 10 years. But I think as Tim mentioned, and we can share in more detail the proposal, we still will be getting taxes in over those 10 years, which will far exceed what we're currently collecting on just the empty land back there.
Did you ask them what their return on equity is going to be?
I didn't, but I can ask them.
I definitely would like to know, because why did they?
May I ask?
Sorry.
Finish, Lynn, go ahead.
Now, do you have any idea why they kind of brought this up at the last minute instead of while they were going through the process? They're getting a density bonus and a bunch of other things to make the project presumably viable on its own. Because it sounds great to get a state grant to build it, but we're all the state taxpayers here.
Yep, I know, and this is, though, as I understand it, you know, the normal process for all of these across the state is they go through the CDBG and then the CHAFA, and this is how these projects become financially viable. So as we reached out, and Sue Cullen, who's our Director of Economic and Community Development, has worked on these for Groton, you know, they did confirm this is the process that is normally gone through. So it's a very highly competitive process. You know, we could still not make it. Other towns could win out over us. So this is by no means a done deal. And yeah, our understanding is this is the process that's gone through behind the scenes, and it's just, you know, it's now kind of in front of us, but they, again, there's no guarantee we're going to get this because it is really competitive.
So if we don't get it and they can't finance it this way, that's it? Project's over?
That is our understanding.
Mr. Chair.
Mr. Frischman, go ahead, please.
Selectman Cheesebro, are we wedded? I'm not wedded to a 10-year abatement. I'd like to see something like 7, no more than 7.
So Tim joined that call. That was like a deal breaker for them, as we understood it. That was, and it's not increasing the amount of money, it's that they needed it. Tim, you might be able to explain it better, but they needed the 10 years for how they were doing their deal. But they're not asking us for more money from the tax payment, it's just over the longer period of time.
Right.
So their percentages changed.
Right. The matching program has changed in its ability to go over a certain amount of time. So, of course, any developer is going to want to maximize that time, because who wouldn't? I mean,
I get that.
That was very clear to me. It was also clear to me that if they did not get the 10 years, that it was probably 90% going to be a deal breaker. It would not be fiscally viable, was my opinion, given the call and the tenor of the call.
Even though they're getting $19 million from state agency.
That state agency monies is dependent on the contribution from the town, which the tax abatement in this case is the contribution. So
the dollars are finite. So why not get the town live tax revenue sooner than later?
That was part of, because if they needed to go shorter, they were going to need a higher tax abatement, because it's your cost of money, basically. So they were trying to keep the tax abatement as low as we could, but by doing that, they felt they needed to extend the term to the maximum allowable for that, was what I took out of the meeting.
Can we ask about the ROI?
Yeah, we can ask that. And
yeah, the leverage returns are going to be huge.
We shared with Tim the proposal. I also have a summary on the town website. I'm not sure if anybody ever looks at, but if you guys have questions based on the draft they already provided, that would be really helpful, and I can circle back with them on that. But then also I would say, like Tim mentioned, when you see the proposed potential breakdown, we are getting more and more and more in taxes, and we are getting more than we are currently. And from it sitting there for 10 years vacant, having worked on the EDC subcommittee on this property, I can say, under Rob's tenure as first selectman with Jason Vincent, and now with me and Sue Cullen and the EDC chairman, Dave Hammond, who's retired, great, amazing volunteer from Pfizer. There's been a lot of effort to redevelop this property, and we've gotten nowhere. So I think this is a really good project for inclusive housing and all in walking distance to downtown. I am also very afraid, to be honest, if we don't do this, this is going to sit vacant, and that's it.
And somewhere, Danielle, there's an analysis that, there's some kind of a spreadsheet or something where we can do our own sort of base case analysis of demand for services from this thing? Well, I'd like to make sure it's a net positive tax abatement or not first.
Yeah, that was part of the ask from the meeting that I attended, was both Sue and I asked, and they said they had the numbers of what cost of education was, and some of the costs of that they would burden the town with should certain things happen. So they were going to come back with that, and to date yet, we have not seen that, or at least I have not.
Yeah. And I did reach out to Ridge Meadows to get some of their numbers, and so we're preparing some background documents on that point also. And just also say the tax abatement won't include some things like fire district taxes. So those who will be utilizing those types of services from the get-go, they'll be paying those from day one. Those won't be part of an abatement.
Okay, and how many units, like how many bedrooms are in these units?
I don't have the breakdown in front of me, but I think it's 82 units, and it's a mixture of studio, 1 bedroom, 2 bedroom, and then very few 3 bedroom. Maybe it's like it's under 10, I think, 3 bedrooms.
Okay, and then have you given any thought, Danielle, to, some sort of percentage assignment in your own head as to the moral hazard of this? By that, I mean, every developer is going to march in here, and especially ones that are going to have probably higher impact on tax receipts, and start demanding, abatements.
Yep, we looked through it. I mean, and this is in line with what we've been doing. So like we said, the Threadmill is the closest similar property, and I forget. I mean, that was a good chunk of time ago. And the fact that since that time, Spruce came in and they were a nonprofit, but also affordable housing, and they didn't ask for anything because they were a nonprofit. And then this is going to get us. We're still not going to be at that 10%, but we're going to be closer. And then we are working, as you guys I think know, we got a grant, a $15,000 grant from the state for affordable housing plans. So we are actively working to get that number up in other ways, not just big, large-scale developments, but through other ways of deeding properties over. So, and some changes potentially to zoning. So there are other ways that we can work towards that. So we're getting closer and closer to that 10%. So it shouldn't be as much of a risk as it might have been a few years ago.
A risk? Well, yeah, but we've done it for private entities too, right? That guy from Perkins Farm now is cleaning up.
Lynn, what the new assessor did as part of the call, she went through all the past abatements over the last, let's say, I think it was 10 years she looked at, and the developments there to make sure that there was kind of a what the track history was. So I think the history, having a new assessor in, not that Marcia is not fantastic and great, but it provided an opportunity to do a different eye look back on what it was to make sure we were being consistent from what had happened for prior developments. So I felt more confident after she had said she went through everything, and this is kind of the history of what the town has done.
I'm not worried about what's done. I'm more worried about what it means for the future. Just as a general principle, I hate them, but that's just me.
Most people do. No, but I think what Tim's saying is right, that because we can prove a track record, we have some consistency to point to of that kind of, I think, what the legal language is, but there 2-4, whatever, this project wouldn't otherwise happen. And I think the Lavazori project has some unique circumstances. This has very different set of circumstances, so unique, and we don't do them very often. So we can share that whole breakdown, and you guys can also take a look and see if you think it's consistent. But we have had other people come and ask us for them, and we have said no. So we don't have a problem saying no. This one just seems to me like one we need to. And again, we're putting it to the taxpayers. We're not deciding.
Yeah, no, I understand. But just one question for sure I'd like kind of the answer to is I'd like to see their financial analysis for themselves. I'd like to know what their ROE is. Because, if they're going to get all this public money, I'd probably want to invest in it alongside them.
They were really nice.
It's usually the way it works.
They were really nice about the call with Tim. They were very nice about taking, obviously, the call with Tim. So I'm happy to connect offline and see even if you want to talk with them directly, or we can just compile questions and get some answers.
Yeah, okay. I'll look at the website.
Thank you.
Any other questions for Danielle or about the update? No? All right. Thank you, Danielle.
All right. Thanks, Danielle.
Yeah, you can stay. Next on the agenda is an update on the Old Mystic Bridge. So the first selectman and I went out and met with Chief Richards out there and looked at the bridge and did a kind of a walkthrough and a brainstorming. And what Chief came up with a little bit of input from me was he thought maybe a dry well would be a fantastic idea. So what he was looking at, normally you see them coming out of ponds up to the street so the trucks can pump out of the pond. This is going to be the opposite. It's going to, quote unquote, start on the side by the fire department and then span the opening where the bridge used to be with 2-inch PVC pipe and the proper connectors and a little bit of pitch so that it's able to be drained, but it would be a dry hydrant. And so that hydrant is normally dry, but then they could tap into the hydrant that's right across from the fire department, run the hose right to that, hook in, and you've got live water on the other side of the bridge, which was really the big safety concern that we were hearing from, if you remember, in the last budget cycle. That eliminated having to use the hydrant right by the old Mystic General Store area and shutting down that whole intersection to if there was a problem there. That number is about, he estimated at about 10 to 12,000, and the Stonington Public Works in cohesion with Groton Public Works was felt by our meeting there, they could probably do that in-house and accomplish all that fairly economically.
Great idea, Mr. Chairman.
So that eliminated, in my opinion, and I think the first selectmen's and the chiefs, a lot of the safety concerns that were there. He was pretty happy with that, and I gave a verbal commitment, and I hope I did not overstep my board purview, but I gave a verbal commitment that for $10,000 we could do that today, and that we would work out with Groton if we could share the cost or what we do, and DPW is going to pitch in to help out and do that. So I think we came to a good resolution for a safety issue we had there, that now we can figure out what else, if anything, we need to do there. I would also like to commend the DPW, Stonington DPW, for trying to make that area a little nicer looking. It's been a little tough with the Jersey barriers there for 10 years now. And they did a great job with plantings that can be moved should the bridge come back. We could move them and relocate them to make it a nice little scenic area there. But
it's a great idea, Mr. Chairman. It saves us $1 million.
It does save the town a lot and provides this public safety solution that we're hoping to do. So that's kind of the update from that. If anyone has any questions, I'm open to them.
I just have one. This whole conversation is like deja vu to me. So once this is done, if we foot the bill for this, there's no more talk about this bridge?
What I told the chief was that the town of Stonington, 99.9% would not have money in this budget cycle to rebuild the bridge. And he said he appreciated the candor. He would rather that than be told that, well, maybe we can and it gets cut in the budget cycle. So he is of the opinion that at this point, we will probably put it in for $1 to keep it alive, but it is probably anything more than $1 would be a foolhardy position on his point.
Okay, so I'm confused. Didn't we decide last year we're not doing this? So, I'm sorry. It's hard to tell who's talking when.
There's a little bit of a delay here, so that's what's causing the problem is sometimes people talk and the virtual have about a 2 to 3 second delay from what we hear in the conference phone. So, Dave, did you want to?
I was just going to say, the dollar line item is what he's hoping to have stay in the event that funding comes available in the future.
Yep. Lynn, go ahead.
Okay, cool. That was sort of my question because I thought we put this to bed last year. That, you know,
we had put.
We were going to permanently close it.
We put $1, but we also put money in. No, I think we put more than $1. I think we put 25,000 in to put the plantings and to clean it up around there. Was our final budget. Jim, do you have the budget numbers in front of you?
I do not, but it was either 10 or 20 or 25, something like that. So you're right. There was some money in there for cleaning up and beautification of the area.
I thought it was 15 or something, but okay. So this thing is not, unless somebody comes along to fund it, we're not looking at adding this to our plate, right?
No. That is correct at this time. That's what I told the chief was at this point, the money just wasn't there with everything we're going on. I told him we'd leave it at $1, which he appreciated because then if something happened and we got some huge grant or the state needed, 10,000 in matching and they'd do the rest of it, well, we could do it, but it's not on anyone's radar that it's going to happen anytime soon.
Okay.
All right. That's that one. The next bridge update is the Lantern Hill Bridge. So there was, I will be forwarding it to you all after this meeting. I didn't get a chance to today, I apologize. But there was a review of the structure done by some consultants that the town hired. And I will save all the gory details. The structure itself, I'll call them parapets, the base of the bridge has degraded and has some cracking. There was a temporary patch that was done, that's cracking. And the consultants recommend changing the load capacity on the bridge down to 8 tons, which then pretty much eliminates the ability of any rescue vehicle to transit the bridge. We had hoped that maybe we could, do one lane and have them, or a gate, and they could go across it, but structurally it doesn't have enough integrity for that to happen. If we're going to try and repair that, we have about 6 months to do that, and it seems like cost-wise and some of the hidden worries that they brought up of cracking, moisture ingress that they're seeing that you won't know until you get into some of the things, it probably makes that a larger number than is probably palatable at this time. But even given that, the timing of doing this, it may very well require a complete replacement. So you're talking a number of years before you even get that done and finished. So if you've been up there by that bridge, I have, it's a pretty sharp turn. And I think if you're doing a total replacement, you've got to look at a lot more aspects that are going to take that cost and put it in the numbers of millions of dollars to do that for what is primarily now here's the problem that I have. It's primarily evaluated for this as a safety mechanism. It's a mechanism for the Old Mystic Fire Department to get up to the residents in Ledyard that are past the bridge. So I know the first selectman has reached out or is reaching out to the chief and to Ledyard and to everyone to have another discussion now that we've got some facts. The facts just came in over the last day or two, so I don't want to be hasty in saying that we're pushing this out, but I think that the facts indicate that it's a much higher dollar value proposition and than any of us anticipated. And to now look at that with that eye, how can we be creative and come up with another solution that may alleviate the public safety concern?
Another dry hydrant.
Well, there were thoughts of, I had some other ideas that I won't share here, but they're creative ideas that can be done for under $5 million. And so maybe that's the conversation. I mean, that was my exact thought. So, but when we sat with the chief, when Danielle and I sat with the chief and looked at the bridge in Old Mystic, then the ideas came out. So I think that same kind of a dialogue has to happen of let's go down the assumption this bridge is not going to happen. What creative idea do we have that isn't, $5, $6, $8 million to redo the bridge? What can we do and engage with that and see if there's to alleviate the public safety? And I think that's the biggest concern that all of us have really is that public safety quotient that we feel responsible for, but we can't just make everything new to alleviate a small percentage of non-Stonington residents have that public safety. So I know that was kind of not a great update, but it's the best one we've got as of now. I'll say discussions are still ongoing, and I'm open to questions, as is Danielle, but I know it's kind of a fluid thing right now.
Well, safety first. We have to consider the public safety, and I applaud you, Mr. Chairman, and Selectwoman Cheeseborough for meeting with the chief and looking at alternatives. I think we should continue to have that discussion, but keeping paramount in public safety in terms of traversing that bridge. If that thing should fall in with someone on it, the liability would be beyond comprehension.
Yeah, I think that you're exactly right. There are two
Public
quotients
safety.
there of the safety. One is transiting the bridge right now with any car of any truck of any weight, and two is the safety of the people who live on the other side of it, north of Stonington.
Who
Other
live in
questions?
Ledyard, or who they live in Ledyard, right? So how is a multi-million dollar bridge problem that's not our public safety problem, our problem?
Because we provide the primary response out of Stonington. So we went back to morally. Where's your from the police moral for me here is if we're the primary response, how can we work with Ledyard and the Mohegans and everyone else to provide a safety requirement that alleviates that time burden on the Old Mystic Fire Department? So, I think we have a moral obligation as well as a fiscal, responsibility to the taxpayers of Stonington. That's why, if we can find another creative solution that doesn't overburden the town of Stonington or even burden the town of Stonington at all the better that we still are sympathetic to should something happen.
I have one. Ledyard can get its own fire department.
Can you guys hear me?
Yep, go ahead, Danielle.
Two things. One, just to address Glenn's point, our police chief, I don't know if Darren's still on, but he worked with the Ledyard police chief really quickly yesterday, and DPW is already working on getting signs up and working with the state, with Rick Chapman, who's our contact, to put up all the signs, because the weight limit we wanted to obviously put in place immediately. And then to Lynn's point, we are trying to do a deeper analysis, but just from Chief Richards' input last year, we know there's at least one Stonington resident who their house is on the Stonington side, but their driveway is actually in Ledyard, and they are one house that he used as an example of this kind of 12-minute emergency services workaround if something should happen at their house. And I think last year there was a fire nearby, so he used that as the exact example. And I do believe Ledyard has a fire department, but obviously the size of Ledyard, Old Mystic is closer for the homes that are in that section. So that's where that 12-minute emergency services workaround happens.
Well, that's great, but like a taxpayer in Pawcatuck or wherever who's paying for their fire department and whatnot, and it's like just a stretch to ask for millions of dollars from us for that, to me.
Yeah. And I know, and Tim will send everything, and I know Tim mentioned this might be more complicated than the original design, but just to remind you guys, I think the original design and engineering plans that are still good until the summer, I think had the whole bridge at like 1.2 million, and the state pays half, Ledyard pays half, so our allotment isn't in the millions as of now, but it could grow obviously based on some new findings.
No, but even that amount is a huge amount. Even half of the 1.2 is a huge amount. I mean, for me, I happen to live in a place where I have fire coverage, so-called, except that everybody knows they can't put a fire out with what they have. So, it just seems like a stretch to me to ask for our taxpayers to front the bill for one taxpayer, in effect, that isn't really, it sort of is in our town, but not really. And I thought we had put this thing to bed last year too.
This one, we like Tim said, we were working on this workaround with the hope that we could have it just open for emergency services vehicles, but obviously the news we got yesterday proved otherwise.
Yeah.
It's easier to have a driveway put on the Stonington side so they don't have to cross the bridge.
It's easier to buy the guy a new house.
Yeah, it's all options.
So let's not get too far over our skis here. I think at this point, no one is recommending that we build a new bridge, or yes, Danielle is 100% right. All of us were hopeful that maybe we could close the bridge except for the emergency vehicles, and thus limit the danger to pedestrian or to vehicular traffic. However, looking at what the bridge rating is currently, that rating would preclude any emergency vehicle. So as of 2 days ago, I think it was, we got that information. Now it's, okay, how can we work with them to try and work with Ledyard to be creative? And sometimes collaborative meetings bring out the best creativity. I don't think anyone is going into that meeting saying, okay, here we're gonna redo all the viaduct, everything of this bridge. It's okay, how do we help Ledyard maintain public safety? Because they're gonna need the support from the Old Mystic Fire Department And it is, at this point, it is a creativity meeting, I think, not a, how are we going to solve the problem with the bridge. Any other questions on that?
I think pro rata benefit share should come into this, and Old Mystic is a taxing district, right?
Yes,
Yes.
that's shared with Groton.
That's what?
It's the Old Mystic Fire Department tax area district is split between Stonington and Groton
For the fire district.
for the
yeah.
fire district. So the Old Mystic Fire District receives taxes from both Stonington and Groton to fund it.
Right, but it's a taxing authority. It's okay. I mean,
Yep.
That's correct.
yeah. So I just think it's kind of tough to ask, an entire town to fund something like this, but I'll just register that objection now. I know you guys
No
are.
one's asking that, Lynn. No
Yep,
one is
understood.
asking that. That's I can't stress that enough, is there's no funding being asked for at this point by anyone. It is, how can we creatively, if we could find another $10,000 or $20,000 workaround that is funded by Ledyard or the Mohegans or something, let's find that, and let's find where the public is safe still. But the bridge is less and less a viable option of even keeping that open to any traffic at all.
Okay, I'm sorry. I must have misunderstood your preamble because it sounded to me like we were headed down that path. Sorry.
No, it's actually the opposite. It looks like from the assessment we've got, the scope of work is much larger than the original proposal that we were working off of, where the state was going to reimburse at a certain rate and Ledyard is going to pick up their half and we were going to pick up our half. It looks like the bridge has deteriorated significantly, in my opinion, since that initial assessment was done. So those numbers aren't valid, and we're getting to the point where the damage is to a set that I don't know that it's really financially or realistically viable to replace that at all. So how do we look at providing a degree of safety and security absent of that bridge?
Tim, it's Mike. I mean, I like your idea of maybe some folks just getting in a room and brainstorming ideas, and I think there are some possibilities there. And I was just looking at Google Maps, and the Pequot emergency response building looks like it's a mile from that bridge. Could we contract with them, or could Ledyard contract with them to provide service? I mean, there are different things I think that kick around here.
Yeah, no, and that's literally what we did with the Old Mystic, was kick around ideas and get everybody in front of each other, not in a confrontational, not in a, hey, you're paying for your half or you're not. Let's open the good idea book and see who's got one. All right, so that's what I had on the bridge update. I don't think there's anything else, Danielle, for you, so thank you so much for calling in.
Just wanted to drop by. Thank you, guys.
Drop
Have
in.
a good night.
You too. Appreciate it. Next on the agenda is review of the Board of Ed monthly line item transfers and global budget report. Jim, you completed them. Any questions?
Well, just looking at the budget, there are no transfers to date, so the numbers are what they are as far as whether each line item is in budget or not. So, but I think we all know how the Board of Ed operates. They manage to the bottom line, not to each line item.
So why are they giving us this thing? Because what does it tell us?
Well, the charter requires them to provide the Board of Finance any line item transfers they do. So the Board of Finance in the past has asked for them to provide that monthly report. It just happens that year to date they haven't done any transfers. So it started with the transfers, and this is just the global trial balance year to date that they've provided with that.
Right.
In this case, there just are no transfers, so we're just getting just the global trial balance.
Right.
Yeah. Maybe if we just give feedback to them, Jim. Yeah, I mean, it is a little surprising at this point that they haven't started to take some action. I mean, you just look at the very first row on this report, gate receipt revenues. That's not happening.
Exactly.
I would think that the Board of Ed should be discussing some of these things at this juncture. I know there's still a lot of unknowns, but there are some knowns that they can start adjusting for. Yeah, it would be helpful to see that their thinking's evolving throughout the year versus it, being at the very end of the fiscal cycle that all of a sudden everything starts changing.
I can say that I have had conversations with the Board of Ed chair, and they are looking at the cost implications of COVID-19. And again, I've been given preliminary numbers, but they're moving so quickly because of different scenarios that they're having to go through, where those of you with kids in the schools, we're all virtual right now. So that changes the electrical and utility costs for these 2 weeks. Those drop down, but then when they're in, they're raised significantly over where they normally are. So the actuals versus what are budgeted are very, very, very fluctuating. Good English for me there. Highly fluctuating at this point in time. And it's hard to catch a moving target when it's moving this quickly up and down. I was on a call with East Lyme, and they right now, as of about a month ago, it's right before the election, so it's about a month ago, a little over, East Lyme at that time was $1 million over budget for Board of Ed. So I know, I've sat with Peter Anderson. I know that they're, from a facility standpoint, are working to mitigate this as best they can, but they also have, the town and the teachers and everybody that they're trying to protect, and it's a very difficult moving target right now. So as soon as they can, we'll have updated numbers from them, but right now they're still trying to get their arms around this as we get into the winter season. And I think that's going to be the harder time, because you've got cold air that you're bringing in from outside. I know they got air handling units and they got heat recovery units, but you're still bringing in, if we have a cold winter, you're bringing in 10-degree air from outside and getting so many air changes an hour, and watch your heating costs go skyrocketing. So we'll see. Hopefully Pfizer got it right and we can get that vaccine out quickly. So
it only takes 2.5 months.
Days, so let's go. I know.
I mean,
so given that, we'll move on to the next line item, correspondence. Jill or Jim, do you have any?
I don't have any. Did you receive anything, Jill?
I'll take
Jill, maybe,
says no.
Jill, you may be muted.
She's not. Well, I did not see anything from that. We'll go on to liaison reports. SIP liaison, Lynn?
Yeah, I don't have too much to report. I mean, nothing else has happened.
Okay.
So we'll all see it soon enough.
WPCA?
WPCA, well, the prophecies are coming true. Stuff is breaking, so it's good we have the bond. We're fixing stuff as it comes up and trying to get a handle on making more prophylactic, repairs and changes and whatnot. And at some point in the not too distant future, we're going to have to start thinking about that facilities plan, which I bring up because in terms of sort of big projects that need financing, one of the things that's likely going to happen here in the not too distant future is we're going to have to be looking at some really comprehensive solution to the sewer problem, probably say before we get a new middle school, something, along those lines. So I just point that out to you. We're starting to estimate, based on what's been permitted but not yet built or tied in, that even the diversion into the borough might only buy us a couple of years for Mystic development. So the only place that we have kind of, as soon as we fix a problem that's there now, but kind of, a reasonable amount of capacity for development, and that's not a problem as of yet, at least until the state decides to make it one because of the Pawcatuck River, is Pawcatuck. North Stonington is knocking on the door again about tying in We're going to have sort of a big joint meeting and either put that to bed one way or another, either, decide to proceed or decide that for a variety of options, it's not appropriate for Stonington at this time. So I don't know which way that's going to go because I'm only one voice, but that's coming up too. So that's the sewer news. It's, the sewer plants are pretty old, and the facilities plan is pretty old, and we have development, and we're reaching capacity. So the decision's going to come whether we throw more money at ancient plants or we deal with this once and for all for future generations and do it right. But whichever it is, at some point there's big tickets coming, big tickets. So file that away as we think about things like town halls and middle schools and whatever. That's my happy report.
I was going to say, thanks for the uplifting, cheery mood that threw over everything. Mr. Frischman, Board of Ed liaison report.
I had a conversation I shared during our regular meeting with the chairman of the Board of Ed, and he talked about the savings arising from going onto the cloud. I fully concurred as I did. The board continues to deal with a number of serious issues, and I'm awaiting further communication from the chairman. That's all I have to report at this time.
Thanks, Mr. Frischman.
Can I ask Glenn a question? Wait. Can I ask Glenn a question?
Yep,
Glenn,
absolutely.
does the Board of Ed have the capacity to oversee sort of the financial aspect of its budget? In other words, not deciding that they're not going to manage to the bottom line, they are going to manage to line items, et cetera, or is that out of their hands?
The charter provides that the Board of Ed approve all expenditures. That they have not at this time done that to fully, I think, satisfy their charter requirement. They had pretty much given that responsibility to the business manager, the superintendent. And I think we'll see in the coming months a more active role of greater financial accountability.
Thanks.
Based on my conversations with the chairman.
Thanks.
All right, other liaison reports. I will just give one quickly from the retirement board who met today for almost 3 hours. And the topsy-turvy world that is the stock market and everything, while we didn't hit the numbers that we had took as our assumptions, we also didn't do nearly as bad as I was expecting to hear. And we made some changes into the mortality tables, the assumed rate of return. We dropped that again another 1/8 of a point, and we changed the inflation rate to match what Social Security is saying, so that actually decreased the inflationary rate that we were going to see on that, which had a bigger cost savings than anything else to the overall funding. And as a net result of all those changes, where we would normally expect to pay more into the account to hit our actuarial values, we're actually going to save probably about $25,000, give or take, from what we did from this past fiscal year. So we made even more positive, in my opinion, conservative changes. We went more conservative. As a result of doing that, FIA, our advisors, said they would not change our asset allocation ratios because we're going with a lesser rate of return, which ought to more closely align with what they anticipate for the coming year. So a couple other little kind of procedural things that are changing, but overall the plan, both the DB and the DC plans are being fairly well run right now. Couple little minor modifications that were needed to be made, but other than that, it looks pretty good, and we're in the top 20% for solvency of the plans for the statewide. So they were quite impressed with our funding ratio. We're up at about 89.5% funded for the pension plan.
That's very good. What's our predicated?
That's amazing. That's great.
6.375. No one in the state at this point is above 8%. The last ones this past year dropped below 8%. Finally, we were at 6.5% this past year and dropped at an eighth of a point.
That's good work, Tim.
So yeah, that's been going pretty well. So happy with everyone who participated, and there's some FIAs good, and there's some good people on, not me, but there's some other good people who are on the retirement board who actually do this, some facet of this for their living. So when you get into review of managers of funds and that, there's a very healthy discussion happening. So I think everyone who is participating in the town in that plan, be it any of them, the 457, the 401As, the DB plans, they're really in good hands. I was very impressed. I'm always very impressed with the people presenting at that board. So any other liaison reports? We do have other on the agenda, so if anyone has one. Roger.
No, to get a text message from Jill that she had a problem with her mute button, but there is no correspondence.
No correspondence from Jill, but a mute button issue. Okay. I have that mute button issue myself many a time. Any other liaison reports?
Yep, Tim, it's Mike. Just one quick one from me. I heard from our tax collector yesterday, and we're still in pretty good shape on the collections. As a matter of fact, as of November 30th, we're up 963,000 relative to the same point in time last year. So that's the good news. The thing that we have to keep an eye out on, though, for is that the next test comes here the next month or so. January is the next collection period, so that's going to be telling, I think. So we'll see where we are by the end of January. And then the other thing that she did mention was there is talk that the governor may announce another tax deferral similar to what it occurred earlier this year. And if that does become the case, it's Linda's preference, and I would agree that we move or do what we did earlier this year, which essentially is on an application only basis. So if you are impacted and you would like to defer, that you do apply for that it's not an across the board type of situation. But I'm sure we'll hear more as the decisions are made there.
Thank you, Mike. That's tempered good for now.
Yes, good for now.
I'll take that. Any other liaison reports? Hearing none, I'll entertain a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
So moved. Second.
Motion, Mr. second, Ms. Norman. Any discussion? No? We're adjourned. Thank you all. Appreciate it.
Good night. Bye.
Night.